It is well known that New Orleans has been on FEMA's top 3 list of disaster sites. But in 2004, the Corps of Engineers requested funds for additional levee protection and for flood control, and the Bush administration cut the amount requested by 80%.
It's the preparation for and the aftermath of Katrina. What do we hear and read? It was an unpredictable act of God. It was a failure of FEMA. FEMA had a bad manager, all sorts of excuses, similar to what we heard about the so-called intelligence failures in the Iraq War. But the blame FEMA, the blame the individuals, obscures what we know occurred in New Orleans. What we saw in New Orleans and the Superdome was something very different. It was the legacy of slavery, the legacy of Jim Crow, the legacy of separate but equal. And it was the legacy and the current practice and policy of our country today, that human beings are seen as disposable, particularly if they are poor and black.
What we was told is that the city had a plan. And if they had a plan, I never saw it carried out, unless their plan was just to abandon those that couldn't get out of harm's way. Superdome was only open when it was 12 hours left before the hurricane was supposed to hit. And then they made people stand out in the rain for some up to 5 hours waiting to get in, because they searched every man, woman, and child and all their possessions for weapons before they was allowed into the Superdome. Reason why I'm saying this, because later it was reported that they had groups of armed thugs running through the Superdome, raping women and killing babies.
They stood up in the house for 8 days. Every time an army helicopter passed over, they'll tell them, "We'll be back, somebody will be back there for you." How long it take for somebody to come get you? 8 days?
I gotta tell you, I thought I'd seen it all. I've never seen anything in my life like this.
No food, no water. I mean, a bare necessity.
And you would never imagine what you saw in the convention center in New Orleans.
You got a 3-week-old infant out here. How is a 3-week-old infant gonna be able to survive out here with no milk, no water?
These are the families who listened to the authorities, who followed direction, who believed in the government. They were told to go to the convention center. They did. There's nothing offered to them. No water, no ice, no sea rations, nothing for the last 4 days. It's getting very, very crazy in there and very dangerous.
Tell them that we need to get out of here.
People are dying. They're dying. Babies is dying.
There's no support here. There's no foundation. There's no plan B, plan A. These people are very desperate. I saw 2 gentlemen die in front of me because of dehydration. The sanitation was unbelievable. The stench in there, it was unbelievable. Dead people around the walls of the convention center, laying in the middle of the street in their dying chairs where they died, right there in their lawn chair. They were just covered up, in their wheelchair, covered up, laying there for dead. Babies, 2 babies, dehydrated and died. I just tell you, I couldn't take it.
As you saw there, that was the best clean video that the network could possibly show. What I videotaped was so unreal.
They got trucks of water just sitting there. And they had this pregnant lady came up there. She asked the man, give her some water. And the man, one of the guards, National Guard, told her no. She wasn't getting the water.
We were denied any place to stay because all of the hotels, the motels, were reserved for Red Cross and for FEMA.
Doctors from Atlanta with medical supplies were searched and then turned around. When they turned around those black doctors, they were denying us the basics of survival.
Neither FEMA or the American Red Cross deliver health care to the New Orleans area. The Red Cross could only treat superficial wounds, talking about cuts, scrapes, twisted ankles. They always say we have liability issues.
There was 94 people that volunteered to drive the school buses down to New Orleans. There was one woman, a bus driver, who her husband works for a bottled water company. He talked to his boss, and they donated like thousands of bottles of water for us to take. So we drove all night, took about 6.5 or 7 hours to New Orleans, and only to be stopped by the National Guard at a certain point right by the I-10 overpass. They had these concrete barricades or something like that set up, so you only could go a certain point. And, you know, they come out at these bus drivers with, you know, their rifles in their hands. So then to placate us, they took the like 40 buses at a time and moved us forward about another, you know, through, I think we went through Jefferson Parish. We were up on the freeway overpass where we could see the convention center, which is where we were supposed to go pick up people. And people are cheering at us, and, you know, we're thinking, wow, you know, this is gonna really happen. And then we got told to sit again. And then at a certain point, you know, it was like the military came over and they said to us, look, you're not gonna be carrying any people. You're to turn around and to go back to Houston, Texas. Some of the bus drivers had to carry the soldiers around to different parts of the city.
The disaster went beyond the hurricane. The disaster then became those organizations, or that particular organization that was put in place to not help.
Could you say who charters the Red Cross?
Our Congress.
So it's a federally chartered.
It is federal, our government.
Blackwater denied, as did the federal government, that there were any private security forces on federal contract, but indeed it turns out, and they were forced to admit it after we did this report, that they were given the first no-bid contract to do security for the federal government. They were given a $400,000 contract to guard FEMA reconstruction sites.
Their estimate is that 30% of the African-American voters will not return to New Orleans. And when we lose that 30%, we cease to be a majority in that city, and then that plantation mentality will once again raise its ugly head in the state of Louisiana.
See, it's not just about what's happening right now in New Orleans. It's about what happens when 10,000 black people want to return to their neighborhood. Who are they going to be facing down? The same men who shoot people in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the Balkans are now deployed on the streets of an American city by people who have said explicitly, we don't want black or poor people to live here anymore.
The state they wouldn't offer no service unless you was willing to leave.
Because the reality is, there was no Red Cross that I could see when I was there. I saw one FEMA vehicle the entire time that I was there. But I saw every possible form of law enforcement, as they call themselves, every badge, every gun, every camouflage.
We seen young black men that were slaughtered because they said they had guns on I-10. But we seen whites, vigilantes, that was able to ride through the communities in pickup trucks with guns exposed, and the police literally just drove by them.
We've got the hidden hand, the vicious and hidden hand of the free market, backed up by the iron fist of militarism. We see it in Iraq, and now the Mississippi